Hi, it's Dr. Johnson, and in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about how standards are created. This was an important topic my first year of teaching because my biggest question was, what am I supposed to teach? And of course, standards give us the specific skills, knowledge, and content that we're supposed to work with the students at our grade level on. Now, in the video, I'm going to talk specifically about the state of Hawaii and the standards that were created and implemented in 2018. Now, to understand how those 2018 standards came about, I'm going to take us all the way back to 2005. In 2005, there was a brand new set of content and performance standards for social studies that were written. And those are great. However, most states have a mandatory review of all content standards that happen on a regular basis. Some states mandate that this happens every 5 years. Some states say 7. Other states have a longer period of time, maybe 10 or 15 years. But, standards aren't written once and then left in place for 20 years. At least I hope they aren't, because things change in the world. So in 2011, this lady here, Rosanna Fukuda, she is this education specialist for social studies at the Hawaii State Office of Education, Department of Education. She was involved with a brand new process that came from the National Council for the Social Studies. This is a group that provides feedback on the national level about social studies and education. She was involved with this group that had developed 10 themes of social studies, and this group had all gotten together and formed what they call the C3 framework. The C3 framework is really a big, broad guidelines on how states could organize educational standards in social studies to help students better prepare for college, career, and civic life. The C3. And this document is pretty comprehensive. It's something that I thought about having you read in class, but I don't think I will because it's 86 pages and it's a lot of depth. And I think it's more important to understand the standards that come out of this. The C3 framework provides a framework to build standards, but it doesn't necessarily give you specific standards for your state. So anyway, in 2016, Rosanna Fukuda got together writing committees across the state. And these writing committees included a lot of different people, from teachers in the schools, principals, university professors. You'll actually see my name on that list. She involved folks from other states social studies specialists to help review and create all of these. And these groups got together and they had to figure out how to write the standards. Now, thankfully, they didn't just start from scratch. They didn't just say, okay, what are kindergartners going to need to be able to know or be able to do? They had a foundation from the C3 framework. And that foundation says, we're going to have you write 3 different types of standards, which you see up there on the screen. The first type that they really had to think hard about and write were called inquiry standards. These are specific skills that students should be able to do while they're involved in social studies. And they came up with 5 of them. For instance, one of my favorite is Anchor Standard number 2, that students should be able to gather and evaluate sources of information. What a great skill for students to be able to have. Now notice it's a skill, but it's not a really specific theme to teach. Although you could teach students how to gather and evaluate sources. But once they know how to do that, that's something they're going to use as part of their social studies. So those are inquiry standards. The second type of standards they had to come up with are anchor standards. These are lenses, what I would call big picture ideas, compelling questions, big ideas about what social studies is. And you notice that they have divided these up into 4 groups: civics, economics, geography, and history. And in each one of those groups you have big ideas. For instance, the big ideas about economics. You have to make decisions. Anchor Standard 9. You have to understand exchanges and marketplaces. Anchor Standard 10. You have to understand the national economy. Anchor Standard 11. And of course the global economy is important. Anchor Standard 12. So once again, not specifics yet, but just big picture ideas. So these are anchor standards. Now, the standards that most teachers are using are what are called content standards. These are specific statements about what a student should know or be able to do. And I've only included 1 of these in here. There are hundreds. At each grade level, you probably have 30 or 40 of these content standards. So, for instance, this is a 4th grade standard in social studies, and students should be able to use maps and illustrations to explain how Hawaiians used and modified land in the Ahupua'a. It's specific enough that a teacher can now take this content standard, make a lesson plans that would help students understand and know or be able to do what that standard is stating. So 3 really specific types of standards. Once again, inquiry standards, skills; anchor standards, essential ideas, big ideas or skills in each discipline; and then content standards, specific statements about what a student should know or be able to do. Now, after the committee had spent time writing these, and these literally took years, the committee first met, I believe, in 2016. These standards weren't released until 2018. They did have the structure of the C3 framework, so they did know how they were supposed to put this all together. That helped them write those things, but there were still a lot of discussions about what each grade level should do. At the end, they came up with some main themes, and I don't know if this is a chicken or an egg thing. I don't know if they came up with the main themes first and said, hey, in 4th grade, we're going to have the 4th graders study pre-contact Hawaiian history. I don't know if that came first, or if they wrote the content standards, anchor standards, and inquiry standards, and then looked at it and said, here's a good main theme. I'd be really interested to find that out. If it were me, I would actually start with these main themes and then write my standards based off of that. That's the way I work. So the committee came up with these. Then they had to have all of these reviewed numerous times. Like I said, they started meeting in March of 2016. They didn't get released or approved officially in 2018. They were reviewed by social studies coordinators, by teachers, by me. They asked me to come down and read them and provide feedback. And they just kept revising until finally they had a product they felt good about. And that product, goes through this whole review process, right? And finally, when it's done, it gets spit out to the State Department of Education. And at the State Department of Education, they look at these and they have to approve it, meaning them in the office. Now, of course, they are pretty agreeable because the person who's been in charge of this process is their social studies coordinator. But the big test of these standards comes when they get sent to, there's my approved sign, woohoo. But they actually get these standards sent to the Hawaii State Board of Education. This is the official approval. They have to present the standards as documents. The Board of Education, which is comprised of, I think, 10 or 11 members, I forget. I think there's 11 around that table. They have to review the standards, and they either approve them or they send them back for revision. And thankfully, this Hawaii State Board of Education approved those standards. And then the last step of the process is that they are delivered to the schools. And this is what it says on the website: approved for adoption in October 2018. And to get them into the schools is going to be a 3-year process that began last year. So that's how social study standards gets created in the state of Hawaii, and where we have standards for the year 2018. And I would suspect that the new standards, the next set of standards that will be coming about, probably won't get implemented for another 10 years, maybe the year 2030. However, the process of debating and writing and figuring those new standards out are probably beginning now. So hope this video was useful. Let me know if you have any questions.